Thank you for your patience, everybody. Apologies for the slightly late start here, but we are ready to go. So thank you all very much for coming to this panel discussion, which I think is going to be a really interesting one. You don't often see a panel discussion like this at a conference like this. I'm Timothy Large from the International Press Institute in Vienna, and it's my pleasure to open this, what I hope will be a frank conversation about wonderful archives. Now, when I think of archives, I think of dusty old boxes in basements, that kind of thing. But when you think about it, they really are treasure chests, very valuable living repositories of truth, of memory, of identity. And yet, in this age of ours, when the populists and the authoritarians are doing all they can to revise the past, archives have never been more important. They stand for knowledge, for the preservation of knowledge, for all of that. And yet they're very vulnerable, even as they become more valuable. So the question we're going to be tackling now is, how can journalists and archivists, who, let's face it, are cut from very different cloths, how can they join forces? Can they join forces to preserve something very valuable? Now, to discuss all of this, we have three really fantastic experts. And I'll just very briefly introduce them, and then we're going to get stuck into this. And we want to hear your questions and your comments as soon as possible. Let's make this very interactive. So I will be taking questions in real time, so don't wait till the end. So if you have something to say, please put up your hand, and I'll try to see through these lights, and we'll get a real conversation going. But I am so pleased to introduce you to our three speakers. First of all, we have, who'll be speaking first, Gwen Jones, who's an archival researcher and curator. And she's currently working on a very interesting project that is close to my heart, because she's working at IPI, the International Press Institute. She's going to tell you all about that very fascinating project. We also have here to my left, Renata Avila, who's the CEO of the Open Knowledge Foundation. And she brings a global perspective on open data, community-driven preservation, and the politics of access. I'm sure we'll be hearing about that. And finally, András Mink is a research fellow and historian, and he's going to help us think about archives as the products of their time, and also the threats that they face in this time. Very interesting stuff. So the way this is going to work, I'm going to give them about 5 minutes each to kind of make their case, and then we're going to have a conversation. So let's start with you, Gwen. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about what you're doing at IPI.
Thank you very much, Tim, for the introduction. My name's Gwen Jones. I'm British, and I have been working this year with the International Press Institute, IPI, in Vienna. And today I would like to present to you the history of IPI a little bit, what kind of documentary heritage it has, and what we have been doing on a small scale to try and digitize and publicize some of these materials. So let's get going. This character that you see above my shoulder, IPI was formed in 1950, but really started operations in 1952, which is when it started publishing the IPI report, which was a monthly magazine summary of press freedom issues around the world from, as I say, May 1952. And 52 was also the year when IPI started holding an annual congress, General Assembly. It's a members' organization, so it's the decision-making body of the organization. So these are the two main kinds of records that IPI has in its archive. Now, when it started publishing the IPI report, it didn't include, the earliest editions include no photographs. Photographic reproduction was very expensive, and it was beyond the budget of the organization. So they had a cartoonist instead. You'll see some of the cartoons from the IPI report here. Here's one of a journalist, cartoon of a journalist from the early 50s man smoking, talking on 2 phones at the same time. There you go. So, just the facts. Let me show you, I'm going to turn around if you don't mind. So, I've already introduced IPI, established in 1950. It's the world's oldest press freedom network. And its archive, as I've mentioned, is currently housed in rows of boxes in the Press Freedom Room at IPI's headquarters in Vienna. And this holds 75 years of its history. If I can show you a couple of things we have. Can you see, where's my pointer? I'm afraid. Is it in the top? No. Yeah, I just wanted to show you a couple of things. So these are right up the top. This is really old correspondence from the early 50s. These are boxes that are marked old files. These are folders containing records of the General Assemblies from 1952 onwards. These are records of UNESCO debates on freedom of information and the inequalities of access to information globally from the 80s. We have publications down here. This is one of the walls of IPI's records. Let's go to the next one. So it contains, we don't know exactly how much, but the archive contains tens of thousands of pages of publications, research, correspondence, administrative files, and World Congress records. You can see the image on the left. These are 2 very, very old filing boxes from Zurich from the early 50s, which are almost airtight, so very good for preservation purposes. And one of IPI's early publications called the Active Newsroom, which was a guide for journalists in Asia in its widest form. It was a guide for print journalists to improve. It was a form of knowledge transfer, essentially. So how to interview people properly, how to do newspaper layout, photojournalism. IPI did a lot of similar work in post-colonial countries that had recently become independent in the late 50s and early 60s. And on the right, you see a picture of some of the congresses, the one in the middle, Athens 79, very stylish. Next one, copies of the IPI report from the 90s and another cartoon of a newspaper reader being punched in the face by the article he's reading. You can see the IPI reports are stored in boxes. As I say, it was a monthly report from 1952 to 2005. And the IPI's documentary heritage, it is an archive, but IPI itself is not an archive. What's the difference? This is a screenshot from the organization where the archive that András works in, where I used to work as well, and you can see it's not the greatest. Screenshot, but you can see there is a description of. How much material there is, the scope, right? The subjects of the files, and also a catalogue. So this means that someone, archivists, have gone through all of the materials and described them and written an index, so to speak, right? And you can cross-reference between various, if you're interested in, I don't know, Cuba under Castro, you can do a search for Fidel Castro in textual film library records. Okay, so archival collections is a very brief description here of how things are organized in archives. So IPI has an archive, but it is not an archive. Why? Because archives have a structure, which is fonds with like big series of a subject, which are then organized into subfonts. It has metadata, which my two colleagues are going to talk about in more detail. This is data about the data. What's the document? What format is it? If it's a picture, is it landscape or is it portrait or is it landscape? Is it black and white? Is it printed material? When was it printed? Who wrote it? Who was the publisher? What year? How many copies? And all of this goes into a catalogue, which then becomes, which is then, according to archival practice, accompanied by a finding aid, which is basically a description to help you find what you are looking for. We've done some DIY digitization. As you can see, we have two examples here. And if you're doing archival research and it's all analog, and you want to make a quick note of what you are photographing, one good way is to have a piece of paper with very basic metadata information on your photograph of the document, and then when you want to publish it later, you just cut out the notes that you've written for yourself. On the right, you can see here is the folder containing the first 10 years of IPI General Assemblies. You can see on the side, IPI Assemblies 1952 to 61. And maybe you can see this really large piece of paper sticking out the top of the folder. This is one of the great things about going into archival records is that you never know what you're going to find. When we started looking in this folder, we discovered that in 1958, the General Assembly in Washington, D.C. was addressed not only by Robert Oppenheimer, but also President Eisenhower. And this piece of paper, marked library, is the text of his speech. And it's on a size of paper that I have never seen in my entire life. I presume it's exclusively for the use of US presidents because it's so big it doesn't fit into any normal box. So, very, very quickly, digitization, DIY. If you work for a news organization and you have something along these lines, analog documents, your documentary heritage, and you want to do small-scale digitization is very costly, and it doesn't have to be too costly, but it's time-consuming and it's complex. First of all, you need to think, what do you want to keep, and what can you discard, and why? If you remember the picture of the shelves earlier on, with all the folders on, some of the folders contain printouts of emails from the 90s. Are printouts of emails to be kept, or can they be thrown? Maybe Nelson Mandela attended one of the congresses in 91 and 94. Maybe there's an email from Nelson Mandela in there. We don't know. So, but you need to think about what you want to keep and what you can get rid of. When you want to photograph or scan documents, we use these two. VFlat is a mobile scanning app. It just takes a picture of you have two options. There's a free version, and then there's an inexpensive version that does character recognition, so it turns your photo into text that you can immediately start processing. This is VFlat. It's a South Korean product. I'm not sponsored by any of these organizations. I just found them very useful. And the paid version is like €4 a month, and then you have unlimited character recognition. Transkribus is more advanced, and that's an actual platform that uses AI, small language models, to extract the information that you want. Then you need to describe what you've got. You remember the handwritten notes, IPI report, December 52? You can use as much or as little metadata as you want, but you need to have a record of what you've got, and it needs to be consistent. One of the formats is called Dublin Core. This is an internationally recognized standard for metadata for digital objects. You can Google it. It's very straightforward. And And then you can describe, you can put your data, you can put your metadata into a spreadsheet. You can use Excel or LibreOffice or Google Sheets. You can also use Zotero. I don't know if anyone uses this. It's a bibliographic tool, and there's also Tropy by the same people for images. These are both open source. And then you can publish using WordPress or Drupal plugins, or Omeka is also the open source company that produces these tools in number 4. So those are only suggestions. This is what we started using. There are other options available. I realize I'm really going over time and hogging the microphone. So, yes, if you'd like to learn more about the history of IPI and see a little bit more of what we have, we'll be publishing an online gallery very soon on the first link. Our email is archive@IPI-media. And underneath you see one cartoon of people communicating across borders on the telephone from the early 50s. And one of the IPI handbooks produced for journalists in West Africa in 1972. I think that's where I'll stop.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gwen. And just to clarify a small point, Gwen has come into our office in IPI in Vienna as a kind of archival superhero to go through all those boxes that, there's hundreds of thousands of unseen files there to try to dig out the gold so that we can tell a bit of a story as we come and celebrate our 75th anniversary this year, in fact, IPI's 75th anniversary. So we will be having a very nice exhibition showing some of the really incredible treasures that Gwen has found. And it takes someone to painstakingly comb through all of that and find these treasures. Thank you very much, Gwen. That's really interesting. Now, Renata, why does all this stuff matter? Why are archives important? Why do we care about them? And why should news organizations think about archives?
Oh my God, so many questions. I want to fast forward you 50 years. So when started in the 50s, the Open Knowledge Foundation started 2004. It's quite an old organization if you think, quite pioneer visionary, I will say, in exploring at the beginning of digital, how we could, all these new developments, how could we use it for good? It was born in Cambridge. And basically, our mission hasn't changed since then. What has changed a lot is the environment around it. And since this session is about future-proofing your organization, I want to bring some reflections from our work. Basically, our premise is that knowledge should be a public good, that knowledge should be accessible, usable, and shareable by everyone. And of course, digital at that time presented unlimited possibilities to make it happen for everyone. Today, 2025, is just the opposite. What we thought it was a promise, what we thought it was the possibility of equal access to all the treasures that we had around us, all the knowledge for everyone at marginal cost. Now we are at the completely opposite side of the equation, with the digitalized knowledge being weaponized, kept away from the many, proliferation of misinformation, nothing that, you have heard about all the problems all day. So I will not talk about this, but I just wanted to make this reflection that our departing point and what we stand for still is the possibility of that knowledge to give it to the people so they can transform the realities. And over the 20 years, we pioneered tools that many of you might still be using. We even coined the term open data and created a definition about open. The open definition that you can still look at is a little bit outdated. We need to update it, but it still is a reference that shaped many of the things that we talk about today in both archiving and journalism. And the broader movement was composed by many of the communities that are powering the tools that Gwen shared in the last slide. Many of the communities of volunteers, very under-resourced many times, techies and activists with a heart in the right place, trying to bridge all this technology and all these possibilities of a different architecture of knowledge and basically bring the tools that people needed. So, but now at this point, we are facing a different reality. I mean, we cannot only stay passive and, okay, it's nice, do-it-yourself effort and so on. We are facing threats that many of you are well aware of. And I'm just quickly, because we want to talk to you, describe 3 examples, very quick, on how you need to reflect in this future-proofing your organization. And while doing so, always not only think of the link between journalists and archivists, but also think of communities like the ones of the Open Movement, Open Knowledge Foundation, the Wikimedians, all these software projects, all the people that can help you with, you know, how to hack these systems, how to use these tools to act rapidly in this future-proofing of your organizations. The first example is basically when evidence and data is about to vanish, you have to act very, very, very fast. And this is not only the example of, you know, there's a crash in the system, there's a coup, and entirely, you know, data sets might disappear. There's a flood in your archive, there's a fire, you know, like these kind of moments. When you are considering this for your organizations, it is very important to have a plan, and it's very important to have a directory, you know, an address book, you know, even a phone call tree, as many schools have, to who to contact. Do I have a relationship with this kind of communities so they can help me in these cases? Quick story, when the Ukrainian invasion happened, Open Knowledge Foundation have both communities, these tech communities in Ukraine and in Russia. They were always, like, you know, talking to each other, collaborating in projects, and the first thing that they did at that moment, of course, apart from their personal priorities, was to save the data portals. It had been, like, you know, like 10 years of struggle to get the authorities in both countries and municipalities to publish data about public procurement. And once the war started, of course, there was a big pressure to take everything down. And so this is not new. It happened then in Argentina when when the change of government happened. It happened in many places, and now more recently happened in the US when, you know, like a rapid collaboration had to be formed, even using a little bit more complicated technology than the technology that we use for the other 2 cases, but still. Combining journalists, archivists, and techies to save vast troves of information from disappearing forever. This, I mean, is nothing new, of course, but the coordination and the networks that we can, in advance, build, and the relationships that we have to build in advance are very important. Maybe even just a 5 steps protocol and the right links and the right people to connect might be very relevant. The second case is when memory is attacked and how, you know, this openness and collaboration can fight back. I have an anecdote when the coup was happening in Honduras. One of the first targets was the National Archive, because the National Archive had a lot of records from the people involved in the coup. And it had truth commissions that have archives. There's many information that took a lot to push out because involved many, like, you know, powerful people and networks doing very bad things everywhere in the world. Many times, especially now with this anti-rights agenda that is being pushed everywhere, are at risk. And I think that both journalists and the techie communities can make a big difference in preserving information and getting the news out, in engaging the communities around rights defenders, or even, like the communities near the archive, knowing the treasure and the history that the archives hold, so they are not defunded, attacked, criminalized, or threatened. And then the third story, and is the last one, is the most current one. I'm very excited. I mean, I was very afraid and upset, and many times felt like an enabler of the terrible AI systems, because we push for openness of content, of interoperability and so on, and many companies with not the best interests have grab everything to train systems that are not necessarily for the public good. But in recent weeks, there has been an emergence of really public AI systems that are being, training in total transparency and in the public interest. So there's the third role that I am very curious about and already prototyping ways we can engage is, if we want AI to serve the public interest, we must feed it the public record. So many of the good content is yet to be digitized, but together with the International Press Institute, for example, we are thinking about the possibility that the archive is not only digitized for interaction, but the archive can offer a unique corpus, a unique data set on how press freedom has been shaped. How has it been defended, how the patterns, how, early signs to detect, censorship and so on have emerged. And you can get all the data from processing and curating well the information in archives like the Press Freedom Archives. So what if we feed the public AI systems the good content, the content that is not necessarily, is not the Reddit, commentary of quite clueless people, but is rich content of immense value that can help us not to repeat history. So instead of feeding the public AI systems with junk food, what if we use the opportunity to revitalize the archives and shape the knowledge systems of the future with something better? So just some initial reflections on how this could operate.
Thank you so much. András, why don't you give us the historian's view on this?
Yeah, not just the historian's view, because my professional background, I think, covers all of the fields we are dealing with here now. I was a journalist. I started my career as a journalist. I studied history, so I continued my career as a historian in an archives, which was created by journalists. It's to a great extent a media archive, which created by journalists for the use of journalists from the works and products of mostly journalists. So it's a very interesting combo, I think. And what I would like to emphasize after all we listen to here now, that what an archives can contribute to the analysts and observers or researchers, besides providing the actual document or the actual information which an archive preserves, contains, and tries to make public. And what an archives can contribute to, an additional value to this, is the context and the correspondence of a set of documents and information. This is a very important aspect of the story, I think, because a single paper or a photograph or a film footage in itself is just an orphan in a dark jungle. It doesn't have its real meaning. Without getting contact and in communication with other related records and other related information, it does not carry a meaning, or its meaning remain elusive and sometimes even mysterious. It remains meaningless in many sense of the word. So this is what an archive can provide on the first stage. You don't see just a single information, a single document, but you can see how it corresponds, how it relates to other set of documents, which describes you a sort of evolution of ideas, or the evolution of the content and information which this document in fact carries, or which this photograph carries. What is the precondition of this kind of communication among records and documents in an archive? This is the processing work. Gwen showed us this very rich goldmine of the International Press Institute archives, but this is unusable in its recent stage, as I can understand. You have a box with old files, you have another box with new files, you have a third box with miscellaneous files, and you have a fourth box with who knows what is inside. So this is archives to be functioning and to be usable needs a structuring. It needs a description, and needs a preliminary arrangement of the documents, and also it needs, all documents needs metadata. As Gwen said, the origin of it, the creator of it, the chronology of it, the circumstances, the most important information about the content and its relationship to other its potential relationship to other documents. All this is needed, but not just for informing you and help you to identify the records and the stories which are in the focus of your interest. It's not just providing the vital information about the archival document or record. It is also a sort of guarantee of the authenticity and credibility of the source itself. We know that every record, every paper, every footage, every photograph can be copied as many times as you want. And with these new digital technologies, through digitization, you can do whatever you want to do with them, to distort them, to manipulate them, to falsify it, to provide them a completely different meaning. When I teach the students at our archival class, I always illustrate this problem with visual documents, about which we mostly believe that those are the most authentic things, the photograph or a film which was made on site. This is not true at all. With a photograph or a film footage without metadata, without guaranteeing where it came from, who are on the picture, when it was done, in which circumstances, in which place of the world, you can use anything for anything. I can guarantee that. But if there is an archival background, there is a hardware of this document with all these sort of metadata, which guarantees the complexity and the full content and the full credibility of this document as the original one, the manipulations can be controlled, fact-checking can work. So this is what an archives also provide. All behind this, there is a principle which we use, the so-called provenance principle. The provenance principle means that through the archiving process, we should preserve somehow the original context, the original background, the original structure of the incoming materials. But it all serves not just, as I said, information, but also authenticity and credibility. What are the bad news about that? First of all, authenticity does not mean that the record contains truth. These are two different things. The archives is not responsible for the truthfulness of the content in the record. What it can provide you, that how it came into birth, how it relates to other documents, and from then on it is your work, your critical assessment, your analysis, which gives them the real meaning and real evaluation and real critical assessment of the record itself. It's the responsibility of the researcher or the analyst. The second thing is that all of this, what I said, requires an intervention of the archivists. The structuring, the arrangement, the metadata, the tagging, all of this is a sort of intervention. And this intervention is never innocent and never neutral. Not because archivists and archives are biased and they have an intention to falsify the documents, but because of the very simple fact that all generations and all times have their own, ideas of the word, their ideas how to describe, how to classify, how to arrange things in their minds, their own ideas about the important questions they want to seek an answer. And all these background ideas, convictions, and cultural routines somehow influence how they arrange the materials, which image and which fantasy they have about reality. This is unavoidable. The problem is that it means, first of all, that sometimes it makes archival research difficult, because the archives, as it was created, at the moment when it was created, and at the moment when the people who decided how to structure and how to build up an archival system, they wanted to answer their own questions, not your questions. They did not know about your future questions. They had no idea what future generations would like to know, or what kind of interests and questions they will have on the basis or about the very same materials. So when you go to an archives and you think that you will get an answer to your direct questions, in many cases you don't get anything, which does not mean that the information is not there, but it just means that you should put yourself into the position of their time and their ideas and their associative set of views and their thinking to find the and to identify the documents which might serve your actual research interests. So the provenance principle, which is, I said, a very important guarantee of authenticity, at the same time it can be an obstacle of effective research work in an archives.
Thank you, András. I think we might need to move on to some questions and so on, allow a bit of a conversation, but thank you very much. I will open it up now to any questions or comments. Just before I do that, I just have a very quick, quite practical question for somebody. If you're a news organization sitting on archival material, which you want to digitize, just really briefly, where do we even begin? Like, what do we need to do? How do we do it? How much does it cost? Just like give us a sense of the job we have to do and how to do it. Would somebody like to just really briefly?
I mean, it's, as Renata said, you need to move quickly, but you also need to understand that I'm afraid archiving is a lot slower. The processes involved are slower than getting stories out. You know, scanning, you can't get around the fact that scanning takes a long time and it's boring, and then there are tools that will speed up the description and arranging the material so you can publish it so it can be accessible, but that also requires human thought. And of course, AI can't read anything that isn't digitized. So you need to do a lot of thinking about what you've got, who it's useful for. You need funding, you need infrastructure at some level, or you can pay another company to do it. But you need to decide, what you want to preserve, what you want to make known, public. Do you want to keep some things under restrictions for privacy issues because the people in the documents are still alive, for example? I wish I could give you like a 5-step plan, but it involves quite a lot of thinking. Then it involves time-consuming digitization, and then it involves making things public.
Okay, so it sounds pretty overwhelming, actually. Can you give us some hope that we might be able to do it?
Well,
sorry, I just wanted to say very, very quickly that at this moment in time, archivists and journalists are having quite similar conversations from different professional perspectives regarding digitization and access to historical records. Archivists are concerned that in our post-truth world, we need to re-engage members of the public with historical records that we preserve. That in the age of fake news, there is a lot of information proving your case, showing your work, doing your job as journalists that archives can help you with. And please, Renata.
Here. Yes, Renata.
So in small organizations, the thing that's happening that we are seeing as well is digitally only management of information, sometimes in the cloud, sometimes in clouds that you can be locked out of when it is no longer, sustainable, and you cannot no longer afford. So it's an important conversation inside your organization where your valuable information lives. How sustainable is that? Do you have backups? How is it curated? If you go bankrupt, where is it going to live? Is there a place where we can, that can be a very interesting play of the archives. Can I, as a, independent journalism organization with a valuable archive that went bankrupt or that is, in exile, where is my precious data set going to live? Or is it just because I have no money anymore, all this legacy is going to disappear? Not to be responded now, but it's a question, a very important question to ask. Can some IPI receive these valuable data sets so history doesn't, our contemporary history doesn't vanish?
Yes, very important. Okay, let's go to the audience. All right, let's begin over here. With just wait for the microphone. And please identify yourself if you don't mind.
Hello, my name is Ocean. Oh, wow, that's loud. I'm not associated with anything. I'm just a student attending this conference to learn more about the journalism field and everyone here as a whole. I have a question about, as an archivist, what do you think is the most enjoyable part in your archival work that you do?
I've given you a brief introduction into the IPI archive. We don't know what's in it. That's the most enjoyable part. You might go looking for an answer. You might find part of it. You might be surprised. You might realize that your question was completely wrong, or you might nail it. So it's it's detective work, really. And and also there's a manual aspect to it as well, scanning in documents and describing them, that you can actually see how much work you've done. That's nice.
Okay, thank you. All right, we had a question up there, and then we'll come to you next, sir.
Hello, my name is Zoltán Sipos. I'm a journalist, and I've been publishing almost exclusively online for about 20 years now. And now that I'm getting slightly older, I am increasingly concerned about how to preserve my communication. That again, that is like basically everything is online, from my articles to my chats, my basically everything. What would be your take on this issue? Like how can I start thinking about saving all my stuff in a way that maybe in 50 or 60 years I can give all my stuff to a press organization? Who knows?
Any tips?
First of all, I think you should set up a system of different fields and topics in which you arrange the items of your archives. I can tell you that this is a very, very difficult thing, because when we live our lives and when we leave back the traces of our lives, in our mind everything is interconnected in a very, very complex way. And this is sometimes very, very difficult to decide that, for example, this letter or this photograph or this email or whatever belongs to our private life or to our public activity. This belongs to that topic and not the other topic. But without that, you will just recreate the chaos and mess of your existing documents. So you should make painful decisions, and you should be very consequential, not to put everything everywhere. You will see if you start it that you will have an inclination to put it this as well, but you know this also belongs to that category or that class of documents, so I put it also there, and so on and so on. You should give a kind of title or subject of it in order to make it searchable. So these are, I think, the first steps of building up something like that.
Great. Gwen, just quickly, we've got 5 minutes left, so I'm going to...
Very quickly, copies. Make copies and more copies and keep them in separate places and keep them in separate formats. JPEG, TIFF, PDF, they're quite stable at the moment. Who knows, in 20 years' time, maybe they won't exist anymore, but copies, copies, copies. And don't think that cloud storage is storage, it's not.
And don't want to keep everything.
Renata, your tips.
Open formats, open standards, and do not Internet Archive is great. Do not rely on a centralized point of backup ever, even if there's great tools there. And yeah.
Okay, yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Yorgos Konstas, and I'm coming from the island of Crete. I'm a reporter for media there. You are talking about open archives. What happened with the archives that they are not open? And I don't know what happened in your countries, but here in Greece, the situation is a little bit different. I'm involved a lot with the period of the Second World War and the German occupation of Greece. And until now, it's very, very difficult to open some archives. The archives from the Greek police is closed. They open only 10 years before for 2 years. I am interested about the trials of the collaborators of the Nazi. It's very difficult to find the archives because the jury say no. Because if you write something, there will be social fight. But they pass 75 years, and it's still closed. You can find them. I don't know what happened exactly in your countries, but of course the problem, they are not the archivists. The problem is the organizations and the law. But just to have in my mind.
Renata?
I'm come from Guatemala, so I can hear, all our Truth Commission process. The source files are closed for 50 years. In El Salvador, the water of El Salvador are closed forever, living in a basement in the United Nations that we cannot access. So I think that the most important thing here is the link up with journalism and community, because we need nothing angers the people, especially young people, more than knowing that there's precious information that that should be public that they cannot access. So I think that just saying, we have all these archives, but sorry, you cannot access them, can trigger people, especially, young people. I want to know what's there, and I think that it has to be a societal push to open the archives, otherwise it's not going to happen. In Guatemala, it happened by chance. There was an explosion in the police archive, and because they were keeping ammunition, it was and all the data of the disappear emerged. It's a beautiful history to look at, because when a repressive government came back in power, of course, all the funding of the archive was cut again, and all the information was taken offline. So it's a cycle, but we need to push. We cannot rely on random explosions at archives, but I think that we need to push, and young people, especially those working in accountability, or just people living around the areas of the archives, okay, this is ours. We need to reclaim archives as ours, as public goods, because it is ours. It's our history, and we cannot shape the future of any place if we don't have access to our history.
Archives as a public good. Okay, we have 1 minute left, so we're going to have, we had one question up here, I think. No? Okay, and then we'll go to you.
What are your thoughts when some media outlets, libraries, and governments are tossing parts or even the world archives into the dumpster?
Who would like to take that? Did you understand? What are your thoughts when so many governments are essentially throwing out the archives, throwing them into the dust? Is that?
Yeah.
We've got about just a few seconds, so it's going to have to be a quick.
It's reoccurring in the life cycle of archives and creation and destruction of documents. It's always political.
I mean, what is the biggest threat to archives? We said that they were vulnerable. Why are they vulnerable? How are they attacked?
The further limitation on access, because all states implement some restrictions and limitations in the access to archives, but less democratic states implement more severe and more restrictive limitations. I could tell a lot of nice stories about Russian archives in the 90s and Russian archives, for example, nowadays, but even democratic countries. And we have to admit that some of the restrictions are legitimate. So there is a state and common interest of not to provide access immediately to all of the documents. But this is a real threat. The other threat is, of course, the cut of fundings. More autocratic the regime, less the interest to maintain archives which can confront them with their own lies about their history, about their past, and about their present. So there is a constant intention to undermine the functioning of these kind of memory institutions and to prevent a wide-scale public access to information. So these are the most important threats. The other threat is, of course, the cut of fundings. More autocratic the regime, less the interest to maintain archives which can confront them with their own lies about their history, about their past, and about their present. So there is a constant intention to undermine the functioning of these kind of memory institutions and to prevent so these are I think the most important threats. Just to add one sentence, my institutions was the initiator of the Open Access Initiative about 30 years ago, which then and from then on tried to promote a more and more free access to archival documents all over the world, especially to archives which had been created and financed on public money, on public funds. But still, I can tell you that our archives is the only one in Hungary which does not require any permission or authorization to have a permission to do research in the archives, and who does not ask for money for using the archives.
Okay.
We are the only one in the country.
We are well and truly out of time. Let's give a final 30 seconds to Gwen and a final 30 seconds to Renata, if you can squeeze it in.
Yeah, just to add to what András said, so the threats are political, they're economic, they're a combination of the two. There are threats from big tech. I think 404 Media has recently covered the phenomenon of libraries, archives and museums that have put their collections online, open access, and their websites, their entire infrastructure has collapsed because they've been scraped by AI bots, right? There are security challenges, tech security challenges. There's also the threat of climate change. You're thinking about a local archive of births, deaths and marriages somewhere in a poor country where the sea is rising, where temperatures are becoming, the environment is becoming unlivable. So all the threats that threaten everything are also threatening archives, and of course disinformation and bald lies.
Lastly, by not visiting them, by not using them, by not connecting with them, I think that a good exercise to have after this conference is go and look for the old phone book at your house, and look at all the archives listed there in the yellow pages or in the white pages, and discover, do not rely only on the internet. They might be completely offline, and discover the treasures that you have there and pay a visit. Yeah.
Use them or lose them, I guess. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Renata, Gwen, András, and thank you to the audience very much.